Black billionaire saves. Plane from crashing 24 hours later. President sent. The screaming started around 36,000 feet. Is there a doctor on board? The flight attendant's voice cracked as she shouted into the intercom, her knuckles white around the handset. Panic rippled through the cabin of Flight 227, cutting across languages, nationalities, and seat numbers. Somewhere in the cockpit, both pilots had gone silent. Not just silent, unresponsive. And no one knew why. In economy class, Malik Grayson opened his eyes slowly. He had been halfway through a paperback on aviation ethics, slouched in seat 21C, when the announcement came. Unlike the passengers around him, Malik didn't gasp, didn't panic, didn't reach for his phone. Instead, he unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up calmly, his 6'3" frame towering over the row. "Sir, please sit down," a flight attendant pleaded, her voice sharp from fear more than protocol. Malik looked her in the eye. "Are both pilots down?" The woman hesitated, and in that instant, Malik knew. "Yes," she whispered. He exhaled through his nose and said simply, "Take me to the cockpit." She blinked at him, as if trying to process who he thought he was. "I'm not playing games," Malik said, his voice lower now, more measured. "Every second counts." A businessman in a tailored navy suit stood up 2 rows ahead. "Whoa, hold on." "Who the hell are you? We're just letting random people into the cockpit now?" People turned to look, phones already raised, recording. Malik didn't react. He never did, not when it was bait. The flight attendant stared at him for another second, then seemed to register something beyond his calm tone. The way he moved with precision, like someone trained to think 10 steps ahead. She nodded once, urgently, and gestured for him to follow. As he made his way down the aisle, heads turned, whispers followed him. Was he crew? Military, a pilot, no one knew. Malik didn't answer the questions in their eyes. He walked like a shadow through chaos, stepping into the cockpit that had gone silent far too long. What he saw inside made his jaw tighten. Captain Holt slumped in his chair, face grey, oxygen mask dangling uselessly from one ear. First Officer Lin had collapsed beside the console, one hand still twitching slightly against the throttle. A warning light blinked red, steady and calm, like a heartbeat in a dying body. Cockpit oxygen system failure. Malik muttered under his breath. They never fixed the O2 bypass. Same damn system from 20 years ago. He took a seat. Hands moving fast but steady, Malik pulled the headset over his ears and switched frequencies. Static buzzed in his ear before a voice cut through. "This is New York Center. Flight 227, do you copy?" Malik keyed the mic. "New York Center, this is Flight 227. Both pilots are unconscious. I'm taking control." There was a pause, the kind only professionals made when processing the impossible. "Copy that. Identify yourself." Malik hesitated. Then he said, "Call me Echo." "Echo, are you a pilot?" "Yes." "I've flown this model before. I need reroute coordinates, emergency protocol, and status of ground emergency prep." "Understood. You're cleared for reroute." "Can you confirm the aircraft type?" Malik looked around. "Boeing 777-300ER. Fuel at 53%. Autopilot is holding, but we're descending." Back in the cabin, the businessman in first class, now with his phone filming, scoffed. "Seriously? They let some guy from coach fly the plane." "This is insane." A woman beside him whispered, "What if he saves us?" "He's gonna get us all killed." In the cockpit, Malik ignored it all. What he didn't say was that he had logged over 4,000 hours as a USAF test pilot before disappearing into the private sector. That he'd flown prototypes no one outside the Pentagon even knew existed. That he had once pulled a crippled fighter jet out of a nosedive with one engine, two busted flaps, and a co-pilot with a shattered leg. He didn't need applause. He needed altitude. "New York Center," Malik said. "I need a descent path. Start prepping emergency at Dover AFB." "Confirmed. Echo, you're doing well." "Keep your current heading." The controls vibrated under his palms, and the 777 responded like it was remembering something, as if it too knew him. Malik began calculating descent rate, wind drift, engine torque. Then something caught his eye on the side panel. A second red light blinked, faint, almost hidden behind the autopilot console. External override accessed. His fingers stopped moving. "New York Center, are you seeing any anomalies in our transponder signature?" A moment of static. "Negative, Echo, but we just lost external telemetry from your flight." "Are you experiencing jamming?" Malik's pulse quickened. "Possible. Tell Dover to clear all surrounding airspace." "And one more thing. Verify if this aircraft was serviced at Elysian Aerospace in Paris." Pause. Then, "Echo, stand by." "Confirmed. Why?" Malik's jaw clenched. "Because I think this was sabotage." In that moment, the oxygen failure stopped being a freak accident. It became something far more chilling. Someone had tried to bring this plane down, but they hadn't counted on Malik Grayson being on board. Outside the cockpit, the cabin had quieted. People sat frozen, clutching armrests. Loved ones. Hope. One little girl handed a napkin to her mother with something scribbled in crayon. "Give this to the man flying the plane," she said. On it was a drawing of a black man in the cockpit with a heart next to him. Underneath it said, "Thank you." The flight attendant slid it under the door. Malik saw it. He didn't smile, not yet. But something shifted in his eyes. He spoke into the headset again. "New York Center, I'm bringing this bird down. But we'll need a full investigation crew waiting on the tarmac. I'm sitting on more than passengers. This might go deeper than you think." "Understood, Echo." "We'll be ready." Malik pulled back the throttle, gently began the first step in the descent checklist, and whispered to himself, "You're not dying today. Not on my watch." Outside, clouds broke open to reveal the faint glow of eastern seaboard lights below. The descent had begun. But the story was only just taking off. The door to the cockpit swung shut behind him with a solid click, sealing Malik into silence with the two unconscious men beside him. The weight of what he was doing hadn't quite hit yet, not even as his fingers flew across controls, rechecking fuel, hydraulics, weather data. He didn't have the luxury of second-guessing. There were 200 lives behind him. No time for fear. No room for doubt. But the cabin was a different story entirely. "Who is he again?" someone asked. "He's just a guy. He was sitting in coach." "Coach," said the businessman from first class, still live-streaming on his phone, voice dripping with disbelief. "We're literally letting some stranger from row 20 fly the aircraft. This is what panic looks like." The woman next to him, a retired school principal named Lorraine, frowned. "You ever flown a plane?" "That's not the point." "We have protocols for this. Where's the air marshal?" "Maybe he is the protocol," Lorraine said, folding her arms. Meanwhile, in the galley, flight attendants huddled like soldiers before battle. Emily, the lead attendant, paced. "What if he can't land it?" "Then we're already dead," whispered another. "No," Emily said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I've seen the way he moves. That's not panic. That's control. We trust him. That's our job now." Back in the cockpit, Malik's hand hovered near the autopilot controls, eyes locked on the altimeter. Then he reached up and killed the autopilot. The aircraft jerked slightly, just enough to make passengers murmur again. A few screamed. Malik didn't flinch. He eased into manual control like he was sliding into a memory. The jet responded instantly, smoothly. It was like breathing again after being underwater. Then the voice returned in his headset. "Echo, we're getting reports from internal FAA logs. There's an issue with your plane's service record." The last inspection from Elysian Aerospace was flagged. Someone marked a critical component as replaced, but there's no shipping confirmation. We're investigating. Malik's voice was ice. "You don't need to investigate. I already know who signed off on it. Gregory Langston."
He used to work for my company until I fired him for falsifying data. He's back in the game. How the hell do you know that? Because I own 13% of Elysian stock. Quietly.
And I've been watching them cook safety reports for years. You're saying this was intentional. I'm saying this wasn't an accident. This flight was rigged to fail, and someone wanted it that way. The silence on the other end was heavier than static. Back in first class, the businessman was now shouting, "This is insane! We don't even know his name! What if he's hijacking the damn plane?" "He's flying it, not crashing it," Lorraine snapped. "He's flying it with no ID, no clearance, and the whole world is watching us die." Lorraine stood up, leaned close, and said quietly, "If we live through this, you owe that man an apology. And maybe your job." His phone was still recording. In row 24, a young boy named Ezra watched the live feed on his iPad. His mother clutched his hand tightly, but Ezra looked up at her and whispered, "He looks like my uncle." The mother smiled through tears. "Then we're in good hands." Meanwhile, in the cockpit, Malik adjusted course slightly. "Echo, you're now 40 miles out from Dover. Weather's holding. Winds cross at 9 knots. Runway is clear." "Copy that," he said, starting final systems check. Then a low beep caught his attention. A message flashed across the secondary screen. "Unknown input. External signal detected." Malik narrowed his eyes. Someone was trying to access the flight controls remotely. He switched frequencies. "New York Center, we've got a possible cyber interference. Someone is pinging the system." "Echo, we don't have confirmation on that yet. You will in 30 seconds. "They're trying to override the descent protocol." Malik's fingers danced across the keys, locking down manual override. The screen blinked red again, then finally shifted to green. "Override secured," he muttered. "Echo, do you need military intercept?" "No, I'll land this jet. Just make sure no one scrubs the data from this black box." Behind him, the cockpit door knocked lightly. It opened just a sliver, and Emily's face appeared. "I don't want to distract you," she said softly, "but someone gave me this to pass on." She slipped a folded piece of paper inside. Malik took it. Opened it. A child's handwriting. "You're my hero," it read. "Please don't let us fall." He closed his eyes for a second. Just 1 second. "I won't," he whispered. And then something unexpected happened. A tear slipped down his cheek. Not out of fear. Out of memory. Because once, long ago, he had promised someone, his mother, before the military, before the tech world, that no matter how high he flew, he would never forget the people still on the ground. He wiped his face and took the controls again. "Echo, confirm final approach." Malik took a deep breath. "Final approach confirmed. Let's bring them home." The storm rolled in without warning. One moment the clouds outside were soft and white, glowing with the blush of early evening sun. The next, they thickened into bruised grey masses, churning with electric tension. Malik tightened his grip on the yoke, eyes narrowing as the first jolt of turbulence shivered through the fuselage. "New York Center," he said evenly. "I've got storm activity along my flight path. Request immediate weather update." "Copy that, Echo. Radar confirms a fast-moving front. Unusual formation, cell movement southwest to northeast. Winds now gusting up to 22 knots. Can you hold course?" Malik glanced at the screen, then out the window. "I can hold." He didn't say what he was really thinking. That this storm wasn't just bad luck. It felt engineered, forced. Like the sky itself was trying to stop him. The plane lurched again, harder this time. Screams broke out in the cabin. Overhead bins snapped open, scattering bags and coats across the aisle. A coffee pot crashed in the galley. Emily Reyes clutched a handle near the cockpit door, her knuckles white. Malik's voice came over the intercom, calm and steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the temporary flight operator. We're entering a weather cell that may cause moderate turbulence. Please remain seated and buckled. We are in control." The word control lingered longer than intended. In row 4, the businessman had stopped filming. His hand shook too much now. He looked over at Lorraine, the retired principal, and whispered, "What if he crashes us right into the storm?" She didn't answer. She just closed her eyes and said quietly, "If you prayed before, now's a good time." In the cockpit, Malik readjusted flap angles manually, bypassing automated correction protocols. Lightning lit the sky beyond the cockpit window, white-hot and blinding. The plane rattled violently. Alarms began to flash. Airspeed dropped. "Come on," Malik muttered, adjusting pitch. "Don't stall on me now." "Echo, your airspeed is dipping," ground control warned. "You may be entering a microburst." "I see it," he replied, adjusting vertical speed. "Going to bounce us through." A memory surfaced in his mind, sharp and uninvited. He was 24 again, strapped inside a prototype fighter, nose spinning toward the Pacific, wind shrieking past the cockpit. He had blacked out for 3 seconds that day. Almost didn't wake up. But this time, he was wide awake. He pulled back gently on the yoke, then eased into a roll to adjust alignment. The plane groaned in protest. But it held. They pierced through the heart of the storm like a spear through cloth. And then, as suddenly as it started, the sky broke open again into light. Cheers erupted in the cabin, spontaneous and ragged, from passengers who had no idea just how close they'd come to falling out of the sky. In the cockpit, Malik didn't smile. His hands stayed on the controls. "Echo," said the voice from New York Center. "That was one hell of a ride." "Still breathing," Malik replied. Then something unexpected happened. A voice crackled onto the comms, not ground control. "Malik!" His breath caught. That voice wasn't part of the FAA. It wasn't supposed to be on this channel. "Who is this?" he asked sharply. A pause. Then, "It's Langston." The name dropped into the cockpit like a stone. Gregory Langston, the same man Malik had accused of fraud, the same man whose name appeared in the tampered inspection logs of the aircraft. And now, somehow, he had access to the secure frequency of an in-flight aircraft. "How the hell did you get on this channel?" "You're asking the wrong question," Langston said smoothly. "You should be asking what happens when you land." Malik's knuckles tightened. "You tried to kill 200 people. Why?" Langston didn't answer at first. Then, almost casually, he said, "Because you wouldn't stay in the shadows where you belonged. You left the boardroom. You started digging again." Malik stared out at the blue sky. "You were willing to murder innocent families just to stop me?" "It's not personal." "It's just leverage. This wasn't meant to succeed. It was meant to scare you back into silence." Malik leaned closer to the mic. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Langston laughed. "Maybe, Or maybe you've got one shot left to land that plane and no second chance if something else fails.
Good luck, Echo. The signal dropped off. The cockpit fell silent. Malik stared at the comm panel, jaw tight. Then he leaned back, let out a slow breath, and flipped open the compartment next to his seat. Inside was a small black flash drive. His insurance policy. The plane was still gliding strong, storm behind them, runway ahead. But now it wasn't just about saving lives. It was about justice. He keyed the mic again. New York Center. We may have a serious criminal investigation on our hands. I have reason to believe this plane was sabotaged by Gregory Langston. I need federal authorities on the ground. Copy that, Echo. DHS and FBI are being notified. Malik nodded to himself. The endgame was changing. Behind him, 200 people still didn't know how close they were to becoming leverage. But Malik knew, and he wasn't just going to land the plane. He was going to expose every last piece of the truth that tried to kill them. The runway lights came into view like a lifeline stretched across the earth. Malik's eyes stayed locked on the approach vector. His hands didn't tremble, not even a little. Every breath he took was measured, drawn in through his nose, exhaled like ritual. The sky had calmed, but the storm inside him hadn't. Langston's voice still echoed in his mind, a toxin that hadn't finished burning through. Echo, this is Dover Tower. You are cleared for emergency landing on runway 27. Fire and medical teams are standing by, Malik responded without emotion. Copy. Gear down. Flaps full. Final approach confirmed. Behind him, the cabin had fallen into the kind of silence that only comes when people know a moment is defining their lives. Some gripped hands. Others whispered prayers. A few cried, but quietly now, not from panic, but anticipation. The kind that lives between survival and miracle. In the aisle, Emily Reyes knelt beside a child who clung to her seatbelt like a life preserver. Is he going to do it? The girl whispered. Emily smiled. I think he already is. Malik lined the aircraft up with mathematical precision. The plane dipped smoothly, aligning perfectly with the glowing lights below. But just as he began to adjust throttle, a low whine screamed through the cockpit. The left engine stuttered. Malik's head snapped toward the panel. Engine 1. Unstable fuel flow detected. His lips tightened. Come on. Not now. He toggled to manual fuel balancing, rerouting pressure from the central tank. Behind him, the co-pilot, still unconscious, shifted slightly in his chair with a low groan. Malik barely glanced at him. His focus was razor-sharp, the nose pitched downward just a touch too fast. Malik compensated with a small pull on the yoke, slowing descent. The wind kicked sideways, and the jet shivered in response. The gears locked into place with a hard thud. In the control tower, someone said, "That descent angle's too shallow." "Not if he's doing what I think he's doing," another voice replied. The nose leveled again. Inside the plane, the cabin erupted into gasps. The wheels kissed the tarmac with a jolt, bounced once, twice, and then touched down fully. Malik deployed reverse thrust and brought the plane to a hard, grinding stop. Steam and smoke rose from the tires. The engines roared, then quieted. The aircraft rolled to a halt at the far end of the airstrip, lights flooding through the windows. For one long breath, no one moved. Then a single cheer. Then another. And then, all at once, the cabin broke into applause and sobs and voices shouting, "Thank you," and "Oh my God," and "We're alive." Malik sat back, his chest rising and falling. He reached up and flipped the master switch to idle, powering down the system. Then he took the headset off and the dash. The door opened behind him.
Emily stood there, eyes wide, face streaked with tears. "Is it over?" she asked. Malik nodded once. "Yeah, it's over." But he knew it wasn't. Outside, emergency crews surrounded the aircraft. Lights blinked red and blue against the night sky. Paramedics rushed on board. The pilots were carefully removed, breathing but still out cold. Passengers were ushered down the emergency stairs in stunned silence, many pausing to look back at the plane or up at the cockpit window, searching for the man who had saved them. But Malik wasn't among them. He had already exited quietly through the side service ramp, escorted by a single federal officer who had boarded as soon as the plane rolled to a stop. "You're a hard man to find," the agent said. "I like it that way," Malik replied. "Name?" Malik glanced at him. "You already know it." They walked in silence across the tarmac, past the fire trucks, past the cameras behind the barricades, past the crowd of reporters already shouting. Inside the operations hangar, two men in dark suits waited. One of them extended a hand. "Mr. Grayson." "We've been expecting you." Malik didn't shake it. "I want to speak to the head of Homeland Security, now." The man smiled. "That's already been arranged." But before they could move, another voice entered the room. Firm, clear, and very familiar. "Actually, Mr. Grayson will be speaking to someone else first." All heads turned. A tall woman in a crisp grey suit stepped forward, badge gleaming on her hip. "I'm Deputy Director Lynn Whitaker, National Security Council." "I've been following your file since last year." Malik raised an eyebrow. "I didn't realize I had a file." "You disappeared off the grid 2 years ago, walked away from a billion-dollar aerospace company and went dark." "That's not something we ignore. I didn't want to be found." "Well, now you've been found, and not because of what you tried to do quietly, but because of what you just did at 36,000 feet. She held out a folder. Inside were images. Internal documents, satellite records, all connected to Elysian Aerospace. And one name, circled in red. Gregory Langston. Malik looked up. "This goes way deeper than one botched maintenance report," he said. Lynn nodded. "We know." "That's why the president wants to see you." Malik blinked. "Excuse me?" He cleared his morning. "You're on a jet in 20 minutes. He stared at her for a moment. Then, slowly, Malik let out a breath that felt like he'd been holding it for 20 years. "All right," he said. "Let's finish what they started." The jet touched down in Washington, D.C. just after sunrise, its wheels whispering against the tarmac like a secret arriving ahead of the world. The skies were pale gold, the air crisp with that early morning chill that hinted at power humming beneath the surface of the capital. Malik stepped off the plane in silence, wearing the same clothes from the flight, creased slacks, a dark shirt rolled at the sleeves, and his old leather boots that had once hit desert soil on military tarmacs far away. He carried no briefcase, no entourage, no need to perform. But his presence was undeniable, controlled. Waited. 2 black SUVs waited on the edge of the runway. Inside one sat Deputy Director Lynn Whitaker. She didn't step out, didn't smile, just nodded as he approached. "Still prefer the quiet entrances," she said. "Still hate motorcades," Malik replied, climbing in. The doors closed, and the world outside seemed to fade. "I assume this meeting's off the books," he said. Lynn handed him a tablet. "Not anymore. The moment you landed that plane, the world wanted to know who you were. Now the president wants to know why." He scanned the screen. News headlines, footage from inside the cabin. A shaky but chilling moment when a child whispered, "He's flying the plane." "The man from the back is flying the plane." Malik set the tablet down. "I didn't ask for this." "No, she said. "But maybe you're the only one who can do something with it." The drive down Pennsylvania Avenue was surreal. Cherry blossoms fluttered in slow motion outside the tinted windows. Tourists snapped photos, unaware that inside the SUV rode a man whose name would soon headline their screens. Malik remained still, gaze steady as the White House gates opened. Inside, the mood was tense but measured. Aides greeted him like he was both a guest and a loaded weapon. They led him through long corridors, portraits staring down with the quiet weight of history. The walk felt endless. Each step carried the weight of a decision he hadn't made yet. How far was he willing to go? When they reached the Oval Office, the Marine at the door opened it with a crisp motion. The president stood behind the resolute desk, his tie slightly loosened, a cup of coffee steaming beside a stack of morning briefings. "Mr. Grayson," he said, walking around to greet him with a handshake. "I've been waiting to meet the man who kept 200 Americans from falling out of the sky." Malik accepted the handshake, his grip firm, but his eyes never left the president's. "I appreciate the invitation," he said, "though I wish we were meeting under different circumstances." "Sometimes history doesn't wait for the right moment," the president said. "Please, sit." They did. Across from each other, sunlight pouring across the carpet like a quiet audience. "Let me be frank," the president began. "You've disrupted more than just the news cycle. What you revealed on that plane, the sabotage, the data you shared with Homeland, could lead to indictments in multiple federal agencies, names we didn't know were compromised. I warned them years ago," Malik said. "When I was still building Grayson Aero, but they shut the doors, buried the paperwork. Labeled me a liability." "And now?" the president asked. "Now I've got proof, and the whole world is watching." The president leaned back, fingertips pressed together. "What do you want, Malik?" Malik hesitated, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black flash drive. He placed it on the desk between them. "I want accountability." "Not just arrests. Reform. Pull every contract Elysian has with the Department of Defense. Strip them of FAA certifications and make the damn data public." The room held its breath. The president looked down at the flash drive, then up at Malik again. "That's a big ask." "So was landing a plane with 2 dead pilots and a broken oxygen system," Malik said evenly. Silence stretched. Then the president gave the smallest smile. "You know, I was briefed on you 3 years ago. We knew you'd gone dark, but not why. My team said you were dangerous. I think they were wrong. I think you're necessary." Malik didn't blink. Being necessary doesn't mean being safe. The president reached for the flash drive. "We'll begin the audits today, and the DOJ already has a task force ready to act. But I want you to understand something. This isn't just about one plane or one corporation. This is about trust. The kind we can't afford to lose right now. You've become a symbol, whether you like it or not." Malik stood. Symbols don't save lives. People do. As he turned to leave, the president added, "One more thing." Malik paused. "The ceremony tomorrow. You'll be receiving the Presidential Medal of Valor. I want the country to see who stood up when no one else could." Malik didn't look back. "I didn't do it for medals." "I know," the president said quietly. "That's why you deserve it." Outside, Lynn was waiting. "Well?" she asked. Malik walked past her and into the sunlight. It's begun. The White House ballroom had been transformed. No press, no flashing cameras, not yet. Just the dull hum of security radios and the quiet rustle of military dress uniforms brushing against velvet ropes. Behind the double doors, final rehearsals were underway for the closed-door ceremony scheduled for the next morning. The president wanted it perfect. But Malik Grayson wasn't in the ballroom. He was 3 blocks away, in a basement below a nondescript office building, watching security footage on a loop. The room was dark, lit only by the blue flicker of the screen. A Homeland Security agent named Dev Patel stood behind him, arms crossed. This was pulled from the Elysian testing site outside Frankfurt, a month before the incident. The footage showed 2 engineers wheeling a pressure regulator assembly into a test chamber. One of them, a tall man with a shaved head and lab badge, paused to glance at the camera and smirked. Malik recognized him instantly. "Langston," Dev nodded. "We matched the serial number on that unit to the component found on your aircraft. It failed the first internal pressure test. They faked the data and shipped it anyway." "And no one stopped it?" Malik asked quietly. "Someone tried. A junior analyst flagged the anomaly. Disappeared 2 weeks later." The words hung in the air. Malik leaned back, fingers steepled. "Do we know who paid for the override attempt during the flight?" Dev hesitated. "We traced the digital signature to a ghost server in Dubai. But whoever funded the system had access to military-grade jamming tech. It wasn't random, and it wasn't cheap." Malik stood and turned to him. "I want names. We're getting close, but going public now could spook them. We need to move quietly." "Build the case. Let the weight of your survival finish the job." Malik's eyes narrowed. "You still think this was about leverage?" "I think it was about fear. They thought killing you quietly would bury your old evidence with you. They didn't count on you flying the plane." Malik exhaled, tired. Not physically, something deeper. A soul tiredness that came with knowing how close everything came to breaking. "I wasn't supposed to be on that flight," he said after a moment. Dev frowned. "What?" "I was supposed to leave Paris a day earlier. Missed the first flight because I stopped to visit my father's grave." Dev blinked. "So, if you hadn't stayed?" Malik nodded. "We'd all be dead." The silence between them turned from tension to reverence. A knock echoed through the basement hallway. Lynn Whitaker entered, holding a folder, her heels echoing on the concrete. "The president's address has been finalized. He'll name Langston publicly. Arrest warrants are being signed as we speak." Malik raised an eyebrow. "That's fast." "He wanted it that way. He said, and I quote, 'If we don't protect people like Malik, we don't deserve their bravery.'" Malik turned away. Compliments like that didn't sit easy with him. Not because they were untrue, but because they always came too late. Lynn walked over, lowering her voice. "We also just got confirmation. The internal leak at Elysian wasn't an accident. It came from someone inside your old company." He looked at her sharply. "Who?" She opened the folder and turned it toward him. The name hit him like a slap. Tessa Renfield. "She was your head of research 5 years ago," Lynn said. "She's been feeding evidence to a third party, hoping to protect the next-gen propulsion systems you designed." "She worked in my garage when we started," Malik whispered. "I trusted her like family." Lynn gave him a long look. "She trusted you too." "Enough to risk her life leaking this. But she's gone off grid. We think Langston found out." Malik's chest tightened. He remembered Tessa's laugh, the way she called him Captain, even after he left the Air Force, the way she used to bring coffee to 2 a.m., design reviews like it was a battlefield ration. He turned to Dev. "I want a secure satellite feed, facial recognition sweep, darknet tracer." "She's priority 1. She's family." Lynn leaned closer. "Once Langston's arrested, it'll send shockwaves through every defense contractor in the country. You understand what kind of war you're starting?" Malik nodded slowly. "I'm not starting it. I'm just refusing to run from it." A heavy pause. Then Lynn asked, "And what happens tomorrow? When you stand in front of the world and they finally see who you are?" Malik didn't answer immediately. He walked to the window, where the early evening light cast long shadows against the Capitol dome in the distance. "I'll speak," he said softly. "Not because I want the spotlight, but because people deserve to know the truth. Not about me, about the system that tried to bury what I found, about the ones who think their power makes them untouchable." "And when it's over?" Dev asked. Malik turned back. "Then we go find Tessa and finish what we started." Outside, the city moved like clockwork. But beneath the surface, history had already begun to shift, and the man they thought had vanished from the world was about to step into it again, this time with both hands on the wheel. The air inside the press room was thick with anticipation. Rows of reporters sat shoulder to shoulder beneath the soft glare of television lights, each of them staring toward the velvet curtain that concealed the podium. Beyond the walls, America held its breath. The official statement had leaked just 30 minutes earlier. Gregory Langston, former executive at Elysian Aerospace, was under federal investigation for conspiracy, negligence, and attempted sabotage of a commercial flight. The news had detonated across every network, but the man responsible for exposing it had yet to speak. Until now. Malik stood backstage, buttoning the top of his crisp black suit. A new suit, government-issued, pressed and waiting in his hotel suite that morning. He hated it already. It didn't feel like him. It felt like ceremony. It felt like politics, but he wore it because the moment demanded it. Beside him, Lynn adjusted her earpiece. "The moment you step out there, it's not just your story anymore," she said. "It becomes theirs." They're going to spin it, break it apart, twist it for whatever narrative they want. Malik glanced sideways at her. "Let them try." He stepped forward, through the curtain, into the white noise of flashing cameras and murmurs that halted the moment they saw his face. For a moment, there was a stunned silence. A black man with quiet command, eyes sharp, posture steel solid, now the most talked about civilian in the country. He took the podium. "Good morning." His voice was calm, low, unwavering. "I didn't come here today to be applauded. I didn't come here to be labeled a hero. I came because truth has been silenced in the shadows for too long. And if we don't pull it into the light now, more lives will be lost." He paused, letting the words settle. "I was on Flight 227 by coincidence, but what happened wasn't coincidence. The system failed, both mechanically and morally. A part that never should have flown made it onto that aircraft, and it didn't get there by mistake. It got there because someone paid to bypass safety. Someone silenced the voices trying to stop it. Someone thought human lives were worth risking for profit." A murmur rippled through the room. Reporters were already typing. Malik continued. "For years I warned that Elysian Aerospace had been falsifying test data. I submitted reports, they were buried. I stepped back. I left the public eye because I thought walking away would protect the people I cared about. I was wrong." He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and held it up. "This is a signed memo from Gregory Langston, authorizing the clearance of a defective pressure regulator. It's dated 4 weeks before Flight 227. A collective inhale filled the room. Let me be clear, this isn't just about one company. It's about a culture of silence, about the illusion of oversight, and about the people in this room, the media, who have the power to hold those systems accountable." He looked directly at the cameras. "If I could land a plane with 2 failed pilots and a compromised system, then surely we can fix one that's still on the ground." He stepped back. No applause. Just stunned silence. But he didn't need applause. He needed action. Later that day, Malik stood in the hallway outside a federal courtroom. Langston had been arrested hours earlier at his New York townhouse. He'd denied everything, of course. His attorney blamed Malik, called him a disgruntled former executive with a vendetta. But then came the twist. The courtroom cameras picked up Langston being escorted into the building. But another figure was seen ducking into a side door. A woman, pale, hair pulled into a tight bun, eyes shielded by large sunglasses. She handed a USB drive to a DOJ agent, whispered something, and disappeared. Lynn burst into Malik's temporary office minutes later. "Tessa's alive," she said breathlessly. Malik stood, eyes wide. "Where?" "We don't know." She showed up, handed over a drive, then vanished. But the contents match internal diagnostics from Langston's encrypted files. She's been collecting everything. Malik gripped the back of the chair. She stayed under radar all this time, while we were chasing ghosts. She was building the case, Lynn said. Quietly. For you. Malik said nothing for a long time, just stared out the window toward the courthouse. She's still protecting me, he murmured. And now, Lynn said, it's your turn to protect her. That night, Malik declined all interviews. He walked the National Mall alone, passing tourists who didn't recognize him in the dim light. He stopped at the Lincoln Memorial and sat on the steps, hands folded. Above him, the statue of Lincoln stared outward into history. Malik looked up at it. "What would you have done?" he whispered. Then he pulled out his phone, opened a secure messaging app. Typed a single message. "I know you're watching. I'm not running anymore. I'll finish what we started. Wherever you are, stay alive." He hit send. The reply came 30 seconds later. A blinking dot. Then one word. Always. Rain tapped gently against the windows of the East Room, soft as breath, as America watched history unfold. The Presidential Medal of Valor sat on a velvet cushion, its gold gleam dulled only by the reverence of the moment. An orchestra string quartet played something slow and somber, but no one was really listening. All eyes were on the man who stood just off stage, silent and still, Malik Grayson. He didn't fidget, he didn't smile, he didn't even blink much. Wearing a tailored charcoal suit with no tie, his presence struck a balance between command and humility. This time, there was no escaping the cameras. He stood in full view of a nation that, only weeks earlier, didn't know he existed. The president approached the podium. His speech had been written by 3 aides, revised by 2 more, but none of them could truly capture the magnitude of what was about to be said. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "in moments of great crisis, our country has always relied on those who rise, not because they are asked to, but because they must." Malik Grayson did just that. He saved 200 souls, brought to light a deep failure in one of our most powerful industries, and reminded us all that heroism doesn't come with permission. It comes with purpose. The applause swelled, but Malik barely reacted. His mind was elsewhere, 1,000 miles and 1,000 memories away. When the president called him forward, he stepped into the light with no notes, no script, and no speech prepared. He took a breath and faced the crowd. "I didn't plan on being here. I didn't plan on being in that cockpit. Honestly, I planned on disappearing." A soft ripple of laughter, respectful and cautious. "I left the world behind 2 years ago because I was tired. Tired of systems that bury truth. Tired of being the only black man in a room full of power and being asked to justify my presence before I opened my mouth. I had seen too much. And I thought walking away was the only way to survive." He looked up, locking eyes with the press, the cabinet members, the service members, and most of all, those watching at home. But that plane didn't care about who I used to be. It didn't care what color I was, or where I came from, or how many zeros were in my bank account. It needed someone who knew what to do, and I had a choice. Stand up or sit down. I stood up. He paused. Not because I wanted to be a hero, but because I remembered something my mother once told me. Don't ever let the fear of being seen stop you from doing what's right. That moment, that decision, is why we're here. Applause. Longer now. Real. But this story isn't finished. Gregory Langston has been indicted, yes, but the system that allowed him to thrive, it's still standing. And I'm not going to disappear this time. I've launched a foundation, the ECHO Initiative, to support whistleblowers, fund ethical engineering programs, and teach the next generation that integrity and innovation don't have to be enemies. He stepped back slightly. And to the kids watching this, to the ones who feel overlooked, underestimated, or unseen, I see you. I was you. And I promise you this. Your time is coming. Stay ready. When he stepped down, the room rose to its feet. Later that night, Malik stood alone on a private runway outside DC. The sky had cleared, stars scattered like breadcrumbs across the dark. A single jet waited at the end of the strip, sleek, silent, waiting. Behind him, Lynn approached. "You sure about this?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "I've got one more thing to do." "Where?" "Zurich. Tessa just sent a new drop." She's traced the funding back to a holding company with ties to 3 defense lobbyists. It's deeper than Langston. She's in hiding, but we've got enough to start building pressure. "You're still playing chess with shadows," Lynn said, half smiling. "Better than playing dead," Malik replied. They stood in silence for a moment, the engine of the jet beginning to hum in the distance. "You changed everything," she said. "No," he said, watching the stars. "I just reminded them what one voice can do." He turned, walked up the stairs into the cabin, and disappeared behind the door. The plane took off quietly, rising into the night like it had never been afraid of falling. Somewhere across the world, a system was already starting to crack, and at its center, flying straight toward the storm, was the man who wouldn't let it stand. If you felt something powerful in Malik's journey, from the moment he rose in silence on Flight 227 to the day he stood before the nation, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it, and make sure you subscribe for more stories that celebrate courage, truth, and the fight for justice. Let us know in the comments. What would you have done if you were on that plane? And more importantly, what will you stand for when your moment comes? Because heroes don't wait to be invited. They rise